What's good, YouTube? It's Chimera, going back to another video. Today I want to talk about the new and improved Chimera cards that are coming out in Duelist Nexus. This is a really underrated archetype. I see a lot of people trying to incorporate it into Branded, which is nice and dandy, but I actually think that this engine on its own is really powerful and could potentially be experimented with in a pure Chimera deck on its own, because then you would have much more spaces to play non-engine cards, because the matter of the fact is this engine is actually quite compact. You can play a lot of non-engine cards. There was a pure deck that played some of the Chimera cards, which actually got top 4 in the Malaysian Nationals this year, so that was like a sizable event, and it really led me to think the fact that this engine has a lot of one-card starters, which essentially give you like a +5, is just nuts. So for those of you guys that don't know what these cards do, they are essentially a retrain of Gazelle, the King of the Mystical Beasts, as well as Baphomet, which are older cards used by Yugioh back in the day, and together they could be fused to go into Chimera, the King of Mythical Beasts, which we are ironically not playing in this deck because we got better retrains like Chimera the Phantom Beast King and his friends. So let's quickly talk about this deck in a pure. I think it really has a lot of potential. For those of you guys that don't know what the cards do, essentially Gazelle the King of Mythical Claws, when it's normal or special, you can add one level 5 Fiend monster or one Chimera fusion. Then when it's sent to the graveyard as a fusion material, you can add an illusion monster from your deck to your hand. And the illusion monsters are actually a new type of monster that's based off of, I think, monsters in the manga. I know some of these guys were previously used in the manga, which is really cool that they're kind of drawing from the old lore of Yu-Gi-Oh! I really appreciate that. And then Baphomet the Great Wings is a level 5 Fiend monster which can be searched off of Gazelle. That also has the effect where he's normal or special. You can actually add one level 4 Beast monster and one Chimera fusion from your deck to the hand. It locks you into fusion summoning, but this is crazy because it's an instant +2, which is just nuts. Like on a body, this is like better than pre-prep of Rights because you're adding 2 cards while keeping the body. And while he's on the field, when he's used for fusion material, you can actually target one illusion monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So these guys all have insane effects on the summon, and then they have additional effects when they're used as fusion material, which is just crazy. It's like Shadows on crack. So then we get into the illusion monsters. There's actually 2 of them that are playable in this deck at this current moment. There's Mirror Swordsman, who I guess was in the manga. It's really cool. These guys, illusion monsters, they cannot be destroyed by battle, and they cannot destroy any monsters they battle, which is kind of a neat little homage, I guess, to the what they did in the manga. And they all have like a Millennium Eye on them, which is kind of neat. So the effect of this guy is you contribute on the field as a cost. Special summon one monster that mentions Chimera fusion from your deck, except itself. So basically any of these monsters you can summon off. And you can kind of see where this is going, because the minute you summon Baphomet the Great Wings, you're able to use the effect to add 2 cards from your deck to your hand, which is an instant +2. Pretty powerful if you ask me. And it also, in addition to that, has an effect in the graveyard or on the field where you can banish it when your opponent activates a monster effect while you control Chimera the Flying Mythical Beasts, negate that monster effect. So it's in like monster effect negate in the grave, which is nuts. And he's usable when we have Chimera the Phantom Beast King, which happens to be treated as Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast, which is the older version that's kind of bad because you have to use the old Gazelle and Baphomet, which are basically vanillas because they were printed like over 20 years ago. Then we have Cornfield Coatl, which is another card that appeared in the manga. He's an illusionist. He has the effect where you can discard him to add a monster that mentions Chimera fusion from your deck to your hand. So it's like a Rhoda. It's an instant searcher for any of these monsters because they all mention Chimera fusion, which is amazing. Then it has the additional effect where it's on the field of the grave. You can banish it while you control Chimera the Flying Mythical Beasts. Negate the effect of a card that targets a card you control, which is nuts. So like if you have a back row and they go Cosmic Cyclone, you can actually banish Cornfield to negate that. It's not just monsters, it's any card that targets your cards on the field, which is really crazy in addition to being a searcher. So these cards are just a really compact engine of 12 cards, and it's really amazing in my opinion. Which brings us, I guess, we'll jump ahead to Chimera Fusion. This is the spell card, the fusion spell. That's a quick play spell card. And it says, during the main phase, fusion summon 1 fusion material from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as extra fusion materials, including a beast or a fiend monster. And then the other effect is, during your main phase, if this card's in your graveyard and you control a Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast on your field or in your graveyard, you can activate one of these effects, add this card to your hand, or banish this card, and if you do, special summon 1 Gazelle, the King of Mythical Beasts, and 1 Baphomet from your deck or graveyard. So those have to be the original names, which there's no really good way to incorporate them, in my opinion, because of the fact that Baphomet actually locks you into fusions. So even banishing Chimera fusion for 2 bodies doesn't really do anything. So 100% of the time, you'd rather just add this back from your graveyard to your hand after using it, so then you can set it and use it to make something like a Guardian Chimera during your opponent's turn, which happens to be a Chimera that synchronizes really well with this strategy, because Chimera Fusion is a quick play spell card that can be used during either player's main phase. Just really amazing stuff here. Heads up card design, very, very powerful. So this is like an engine, I guess, of 15 cards altogether, and you can see that this is really powerful. I've actually decided to incorporate Edge Imp Chain as well as the Patchworks because of the fact that Edge Imp Chain is actually a Fiend monster, which you can use to go into Chimera the Phantom Beast King, who requires one Beast monster and one Fiend monster. Just really, really cool stuff there. Yeah, actually, let's talk about the fusion since we're talking about engine. So, Chimera the Phantom Beast King is the main guy that you're going to go into, and his name becomes Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast while in the field in the graveyard, but it's still treated as a Phantom Beast card. Really, really nice lore there. And then the once per turn effects are, if this card is fusion summoned, you can activate this effect. During the end phase of this turn, send one random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. So a random rip, that's just really, really crazy in my opinion. It just gives you a lot of value in addition to the value you're accumulating. If all of your plays are going through, you get to rip a free card out of your opponent's hand randomly. It's not even like they get to pick which one. So it's really, really nice interaction. And then the other effect is during your opponent's turn, quick effect, while this card is in the graveyard, you can banish it, then target one beast, one fiend, or one illusion monster in your graveyard, special summon it. So it has like a recursion effect while it's in the graveyard. If you happen to use this to make like a Guardian Chimera during your opponent's turn, you can just banish it to bring back one of your illusion monsters or one of your beasts and still trigger the effects because they get these effects on special summons. So it's really, really neat interaction there. There's also another guy named Chimera the Illusion Magical Beast who requires Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast like the original one, or I guess Chimera the Phantom Beast King was on the field treated as him, and one or more illusion monster. Also, he's an illusion monster, meaning that any monsters he attacks is not destroyed by battle. And then the best part is that this card can attack monsters on each battle phase up to the number of fusion materials used for its summon. So if you use 3, he can attack 3 times, which is crazy. And then also the other effect is if this card battled an opponent's monster at the end of the damage step, you can change that opponent's monster attack to 0, also negate its effects. So it becomes like a Shadow Mosquito, Ninja Shadow Mosquito in sprites. If you make this with like 3 or 4 monsters and you go attack your opponent's attack with your monster, put it to 0, and then attack, it's crazy because your opponent is still going to take damage up to 3100, which is this monster's attack. So they're taking like, 9k damage. It could be an OTK. Really, really nice stuff there. The only caveat is we have to have Chimera the Phantom Beast King online on the board in order to fuse it, because he does require Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast. Okay, back to the deck. I decided to incorporate a lot of non-engine. I really find that this deck unfortunately does struggle against certain hand traps like Ash Blossom or Infinite Impermanence on something like a Baphomet, which typically you should be holding the cards for because this is the main card that gives them the +2. So it's a lot like in Branded. Against Branded, you want to hold the Ash for the Branded Fusion. Same sort of deal here. You want to hold it for the Baphomet, the Great Wings. Now, the other card I decided to play was Fenrir because I think it's a generic non-engine card that you can put bodies on board easily to make Guardian Chimera, because it does require having a fusion monster on the field. Also, in addition, being able to banish stuff, search stuff back to your hand, so you have an additional copy of a card that you can fuse for Guardian Chimera using other names on your field and in your hand. Playing a bunch of hand traps, because one thing with this deck I realized is you want to draw into your hand traps when you resolve a Guardian Chimera. So being able to draw into Ash, Veiler, Nib are all highly impactful, because now we're drawing into cards in addition to our popping effects, so we're getting maximum value out of Guardian Chimera. And these are the hand traps I decided to play, but Droll and Lockbird I think is a potential another one you could experiment with. The only reason I decided not to main deck Droll is it kind of conflicts with Guardian Chimera, because if you're unable to draw while you're under your own Droll and Lockbird, then you will not be able to pop either. So that's just one thing to keep track of. Now, 3 Chimera Fusion standard, and then 2 copies of the Patchwork, which I think is good enough, probably 2 and 2. You could experiment. If this card is actually really good, you could potentially play 3s of. But if it's not very good at all, you could also cut it to play more non-engine cards or more impactful cards like the Kashtira cards, maybe more Kashtira Engine, maybe even Unicorn, instead of playing Edge Imp specifically, because with Edge Imp, you do require access into Gazelle because your other monster material has to be a beast monster to go into Chimera the Phantom Beast King. So sometimes you do kind of brick on it, but it's still something I'm testing in the time. I like how polymerization allows you, however, to go in the Guardian Chimera plays much more easily, and then Guardian Chimera cannot be targeted while you have Poly in the graveyard, so that's another added bonus of playing Poly in this deck. In addition to your opponent siding something like D-Barrier, you can have the polymerization and the responded barrier, then you can chain Chimera Fusion, which is a quick play spell card, so another little nice interaction there. Book of Moon, I think, is a really nice non-engine card right now, just being good against most of the decks, stopping them from using Revolution Synchron to combo off on everything except for, obviously, the Adventure token. Also, the fact that they Imperm or Veiler Baphomet the Great Wings, you can chain Book of Moon, so you negate that Veiler more or less, and then you get the search off. And then on top of that, you can still use face down monsters as fusion materials, so it's really an added bonus in this deck going first and second, offensively and defensively, which I really like. Another card I want to experiment with is potentially Book of Eclipse for that same exact reason. Pot of Desires, I think in this deck you play 3 of everything, so you don't really care about banishing anything, and it does have some consistency issues sometimes, especially if your opponent does Ash something like a Mirror Swordsman when it's your only play going first. You could potentially play Extravagance as well, just to get to that turn 1 play a lot easier. So that's something else you can test, or not Extravagance, Prosperity rather, sorry. But Extravagance, I think, could potentially work in a deck like this as well, because you could play 3 of every fusion, and the chances of you banishing all 3 are really low. So this is another card that we could potentially try out in the deck. For now, I think Desires is still optimal, because you get to draw into your hand traps and extra cards. But I think Prosperity could potentially be either on the same level or even better than Desires. It's something that we have to test. And then Impermanence just being generically good hand trap again. Unfortunately, when you do draw it off of Guardian Chimera, you will not be able to use it because you control cards. So maybe something like a Ghost Mourner could be something that you want to experiment with as well. Side deck's fairly standard. I wanted to test the Thrust engine because I think this is really good going second right now. A lot of players are playing Omni Negate boards, and a lot of decks are actually playing cards that are annoying to get rid of that still activate. For example, X Purely Noir, being able to Herald of the Abyss that, being able to Dark Hole against Chimera, Feather Duster against Labyrinth, so on and so forth. I quite like a lot. 3D Barrier, I think it's still good against the metagame right now. You're good against Purely, good against Branded, good against a lot of the strategies. And King Tiger Wanghu, this is actually a target that you can search off of Baphomet the Great Wings, and there's a combo I'll show you guys next, which allows you to search Wanghu on their turn, and then when you fuse into the Guardian Chimera, you can use the effect of Chimera the Phantom Beast King to banish and bring back the King Tiger Wanghu. And this is a really old card that's essentially a walking floodgate, because it has an activated effect, a trigger effect, where when a monster with 1400 or less attack is normal or special summoned, destroy those monsters. So this is really neat against certain decks like Sprite, where all of their monsters are weak. So the minute they normal summon it, this is going to activate and start popping their cards. So it's impossible for them to stick any bodies on the board. And there are also a lot of other decks that are playing weak weenie monsters, like even Manadium, you know, decks that play Revolution Synchron. This is just like a really, really nice card that you can get out in your combo off of the Swordsman alone that allows you to essentially put up another Disrupt against your opponent. So it's something I want to test going first. Extra deck's fairly standard, just one of this guy because he doesn't really come up unless you're going for the OTK. 3 of Chimera, I think you do need 3 because it does go into your main monster, obviously. Being able to accumulate advantage by discarding their cards, I think is nice. You could potentially test 2 as well. 2 Guardian Chimera for obvious reasons. Dragos Tapila is a generic fusion you can go into. Scarlet Red, just like Veiler and Fenrir for like blowing up their monsters, also dealing damage. Avalzar Lars, I think actually does come up with 2 copies of Chimera, which is kind of funny. You could potentially test this. Also Zeus, Arizar just going into with Fenrir when they use Shangri-La effect against Catch-Hero going second. The Zoo package plus Zeus, obviously. And then I think the other cards I want to test out is Cross Sheep and Dark. Oh, I just realized we don't even have Downward Magician, so that's probably another card I want to test out. So yeah, now I'm going to show you guys the combo real quick. Alright guys, so this is the 1-card combo I'm going to show you guys. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon Mirror Swordsman, which special summons out Baphomet the Great Wings by tributing himself. His effect will activate, allowing us to add Chimera Fusion and a copy of Gazelle. From here, we're going to activate the effect of Chimera Fusion to spin off the Gazelle and the Baphomet, fuse them off into our copy of Chimera the Phantom Beast King. And then on a new chain, we're going to activate as Chain Link 1 the effect of Gazelle to search an illusion monster because he was used as material. And then the effect of Baphomet Chain Link 2 to special summon back 1 illusion material from our graveyard so we can summon back the Mirror Swordsman. An effect of Chimera the Phantom Beast King Chain Link 3 to discard a card from our opponent's hand during the end phase. This is nice because we chain block it so we can't get Ashed or Belled, even though we'd probably see Ash earlier, but it's just good practice, you know? Summon out the Mirror Swordsman, and then we're going to add a copy of Cornfield Coatl. So we're going to discard the Cornfield Coatl in order to add a copy of Gazelle just for follow-up. And it's really nice because you can see here, we already have Cornfield Coatl as well as Mirror Swordsman both online. So we can negate monster effects with Swordsman as long as we control Chimera, and we can negate effects that target as long as we control Coatl, which is really nice because there are a lot of cards that target in this metagame, right? Like things like Econ, Book of Moon, so on and so forth. We're going to activate the effect of the fusion to bring it back to our hand, which is really crucial so we can use it to set up our Guardian Chimera play on the following turn. And then on the end phase, we're going to resolve the effect of Chimera, rip a card, and then on their draw phase, we're going to use the effect of Mirror Swordsman to tribute it off to bring back another copy of Baphomet, and then use the effect of Baphomet on their turn to add another copy of Chimera Fusion, as well as King Tiger Wanghu. So this is what I want to show you guys here. Now, during their main phase, obviously, they get the first action, but after they do anything, we can use the effect of Chimera Fusion to fuse into potentially Guardian Chimera to pop their monsters, right? So we can pop up to 2 cards, obviously using Baphomet, or just pop 1. Use the effect of Guardian Chimera to start popping stuff. And then we can actually use the effect of Gazelle, Chainlink 1 to add a card, Guardian Chimera, Chainlink 2 to draw and pop. And then we can use the effect of our Chimera, the Phantom Beast King, to bring back a copy of King Tiger Wanghu, which essentially pins them down from summoning any 1400 or less attack monsters, which is really, really nice, so they get that lock. And you can see how much advantage we've amassed off of just 1 card. Like, guys, there are 5 cards on the field. We still have Mirror Swordsman, the Cornfield Quaddle, which ideally you would have used before fusioning, because you can only use them while we control Chimera, the Mythical Beast, on the field. But this is just a prime example of how much the deck can do off so little. So it means you can play a lot of non-engine. As long as we're resolving Mirror Swordsman, then we're probably getting all of this cards, in addition to potentially drawing other extenders. So even if they stop the Mirror Swordsman, we can still get to this play. So this is a deck I want to show you guys really quick. I would definitely love some tips if you guys have any thoughts or comments, suggestions on how we can make this deck better, because I think it has a lot of legs. It definitely has some potential in the metagame as a potential rogue deck contender. And other than that, definitely subscribe so I can make more of these videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.